Okay.
You don't go to Wisconsin, you don't cut the cheese.
Okay. We are holding by Iboilahu, which is 6 lines from the bottom of Mem Beis Amud Beis. 6 lines from the bottom of Mem Beis Amud Beis. We learn with the tefillah that all children should get into yeshiva without heartache, with ease and pleasantness. Imus, D'Acha Darchei Noyam. Iboilahu. Here's an interesting question. So, Marshall needs some quick cash. Now, he's not selling his Tony because he needs Tony. So he says, how could I get somebody to speculate on something? So you got to hear what he comes up with. He goes to Baruchian, and he says to Baruch, you want to buy the rights that if Tony gets killed by an ox, then you get the knas. Boy, he's really desperate for money. So he's selling the rights in Tony that if he's killed by an ox, so normally Marshall would get the 30 shkalim. So he wants to sell those rights to Baruch. Look how interested Baruch is. So Yibaylu, this is really what we call a theoretical question to analyze the lumdus over here. Yibaylu, Evet shemachrei rabbi leknas. If Marshall sells the rights in his slave, that Baruch could collect the knas if he's killed by a shark, macher or eina macher. Is it sold or not? Now this is called selling futures. What we call in Gemara language, davar shaloi ba la'olam, something that did not yet come into the world. Now, there's a famous machlokes between Rameh and Rabbanan. If I can sell Rabbi Kran's fruit of my tree before it grows. So again, that's a davar shaloi ba la'olam. So Rameh says you can, and the Rabbanan say you can't. So the Gemara now says, Tiboy l'Rameir, we could clear this shaila of whether Marshall could sell the futures according to Rameir. Tiboy l'Rabbanan. Tiboy l'Rameir, we could clear according to Rameir. Ad kan lo kam Rameir adamakne davar shaloi ba la'olam, that I could sell to Rabbi Kran the fruit that didn't come yet into the world. Ela kagain peris dekel, that's the fruit of the palm, a date palm. Davida Dasi, because that is going to come. It's normal that it's going to grow. Aval Hacha, over here, it's a big sveka. First of all, maybe it won't be gored. And even if Tony is killed by an ox, the only time the owner of the ox has to pay is if he's caught. If he confesses, Maida b'knas pater. So it's a big chance that he's not going to have to pay.
Isn't that only when there's kefil or keren?
No, this is also knas.
But he doesn't have to make restitution to.
No.
His ox killed the Evid.
It's a special din by an Evid. He's not playing the value. Evid could be a baseball player, make $1 million. So says the Gemara, somebody is not muted over here. You are, Ruvain. Okay, we found the person. Now, so the Gemara says, Ad kan lo kamer Rameir adamakne davar shaloi ba la'olam kagain peris dekel, the fruit of a palm tree, Davidu Dasi. That's normally going to grow. Avalacha, but over here, mi yemer de mingnach. First of all, who says that Tony is going to be killed by, is going to be gored? The imtim tzalema de mingnach, and even if he's gored, mi mai de mishalim. Who says that the owner is going to have to pay? Because he might be made and not have to pay. Dilma maido mifker. And then he would be exempt from paying. V'tiboy l'Rabbana. Interestingly enough, we could clear the shaila according to Rabbanan too. Ad kan like Kamri Rabbanon ain't on the Makna Davishalay Balayim that I can't sell Rabbi Kranz the fruit which has yet to grow. El Kagain Paris Dekel, the date palm, the Hashtami Alesno, the fruit is not here. Aval Hacha, but over here all participants are here. HaKaishar, the ox is around, the HaKayevet, and the Evet is around. So maybe he could sell such futures. Mai. Rabbi Abba Tajma. This is very interesting. The din is that if a Kayin buys an Evet Kanani, he could eat Truma. Because it's called Miknas Kesef. Now, when Mr. Cohen owns a Shifcha Kananis and she gives birth in Mr. Cohen's house, so that child also eats Truma, because that's called Yelid Bias. So now, Tajma, the Yelid Bias, also that which is born in the Kayan's house, can eat Truma. Matam Alaymer. Im Kinyan Kesef Eichel, if that which he buys can eat Truma, even though initially before he bought him he didn't eat Truma, Yelid Bias, who is in the house of the Kain from the Gitgo, lo kol shchein. So the Gemara says no. Ilu Kain, if it only said Miknas Kesef, Hayisi Aimer Makinyan Kesef Sheyesh B'Yishava Pruta Eichel. I might say that Kinyan Kesef, an Eved that's bought with Kesef, can only be eat Truma if he has the value of a Pruta. So Ma Kinyan Kesef Sheyesh B'Yishava Kesef Eichel, I might think Afyulid Bias, the slave born in the Kain's house, only Sheyesh B'Yishava Kesef Eichel, only if he's worth a Pruta could he eat. And not if he's not worth a pruta. If he was born in the Kain's house, he could eat truma. Talmud Leimer Yelid Bayis Mikom. But now we're going to then say that just like the Yelid Bayis could eat truma, even though he's not worth a pruta, he's not worth a kopek. So also Kinyan Kesef also could be worth, even if he's not worth anything. Vadayin ani omer Yelid Bayis ben sheyesh b'Yishava Kesef ben she'ein b'Yishava Kesef oichel. But Kinyan Kesef, you bought it with money. Yesh b'Yishava Kesef, if he has the value of Kesef oichel, but ein b'Yishava Kesef, if he's not worth a dime, ein oichel, because that's the idea of Miknas Kesef. He has to be worth something. Talmud Leimer, no, the juxtaposition, Kinyan Kasbay v'Yelid Beisai, Ma Yelid Bayis Afal Pishein Ashava Klum, even though he's not worth anything, he eats Truma, Eichel, Af Kinyan Kasbay Afal Pishein Ashava Klum, Eichel. So now here comes the problem. If speculators are around, like Baruch Ian, if there are such speculators, how could there ever be an Eved that's worth less than a pruta? Somebody could sell him for his worth in case he gets gored by a shar. So he has value because he could be sold as a future. There you have the right to sell futures. There's no evidence that's not worth a pruta. Because anybody is willing to get 30 shkalim, a person will pay a pruta to get the chance. If you could buy such a thing, you know, a guy like Mark will buy 1,000 slaves, you know, and he'll cash in on a few of them that get gored by an axe, right? Says the Gemara, no. There is an Eved that you can't sell futures on. In Ika Eved Treifa, there's an Eved that has a fatal wound that he won't live a year. It's called a Treifa. And if a shor goes a Treifa, he doesn't have to pay, because it's considered, a Treifa is considered like he's dead already. Says the Gemara, But even if he's an Eved Treifa, he still could bring his master a tea. So what do you mean that he's not worth a pruta? V'achazin l'meikim kamei. He's fit to bring the Eved a tea, a coffee, a hot dog, a bourbon, right? Says the Gemara, no, b'menuva l'mukishchim. It's talking about where not only is he a treifa, poor guy, not only is he a treifa, but he's also repulsive or covered with boils. So Marshall says, "Tu menishkein toivus." You know, I don't want your tea from such a person. Okay, yes.
The Gemara adds another explanation to clarify the case, like here, the maneuver Mukush. It is the process that somebody heard the case and knew this was the condition?
Yes, this was the question in the Gemara.
That was what it was. It's not that they're just coming up with explanations.
No.
They heard it. And that's always the case.
No, I misunderstood your question. We are explaining that this is the case that the pasuk is coming to include.
Right, but we're explaining on the basis of
an actual happening?
No, there's some Masorah that's what the case is.
Yeah.
It's not just, we have to come up with...
No, that's the Messiah.
That's the Masorah.
That's the Messiah.
And these, okay, that's what it is, that's the Masorah.
Now, next question. Ibaylahu. Now, here's an interesting case. Misha Chetzia Yeved v'Chetzia ben Chayrin. It's Tony / Matisyo, right? The famous case where Berish and Gedalia owned the slave, and Berish freed his part, and Gedalia kept his. So it's Tony / Matisyo. Shekidesh bas Chayrin. He went ahead and he was Mekadesh a Beis Yaakov girl. So this Tony / Matisyo was Mekadesh Chaya. Mahu. What's the din? Now, Imtim Tzalaimer Ben Yisrael Sh'amal Abbas Yisrael. If you'll say that if a yeshiva bacher told a Chaya Hiskachi Lechetzi, you should be Mekudeshes to half of me. Mekudeshes. Yeah, that's different. The Chazia Lekule. That's because she was fit for all of him. And when he said, you should be Mekudeshes to half of me, what he meant is he's letting her know that he might be Mekadesh another woman. And he's going to share his time with both of them. But it works because she is fit for all of him. But here with Tony / Mordechai is Mekadesh Chaya, she's not fit for all of him. Haloi Chazia Lekule. The Imtim Tzalaimer Ben Yisrael HaMekadesh Chatzi Isha, that if Nosen is Mekadesh half of Chaya, Eina Mekudeshes, it's not a good Kiddushin. That makes sense. The Shaya B'Kinyonai, because he's supposed to take all of her and he didn't take all of her. And it can't be the interpretation that she's leaving part of her for another man, because a woman can't marry two men. But Vaha Eved, but in this case, where Tony / Mordechai was Mekadesh Chaya, Lo Yishaya B'Kinyana. He didn't leave anything. He took all of her. What's the din? So Tajma. Hey, Miss Misha Chetzia Eved v'Chetzia ben Chayrin. This is such a nifty proof. This is something that was hanging from a Gemara that we learned earlier, where Rashi said, you'll probably have a question, we'll deal with it later. And this is the case where, again, we have the Eved that Berish freed, Gedalia didn't, so it's Tony / Mordechai, and Ashur kills the Eved. Hey, Miss Misha Chetzia Eved v'Chetzia ben Chayrin. So the din is, noisein chatzi knas l'rabbi. You give 15 shkalim to Gedalia, because Gedalia owns half of him, so he gets 15 shkalim. And now that Matisyo part is dead, the chatzi kaifer, the chatzi of the ransom that a muad has to give to a free man, goes liyoshav to Matisyo's relatives. Well, wait a second. If somebody that's chatzi eved, chatzi ben chayrin can't marry a woman, then how could he have yoshin? The amrit kiddushin v'lav kiddushin. If the kiddushin is not a good kiddushin, yoshin minale. How does he have yoshin? Amar Ravada Barava kisha asu treifa. It's talking about where they didn't kill him. The shor didn't kill him. It just made him a treifa. But treifa is like a dead man. And when it says half goes to the yoshim, it means half goes to Matisyo himself. He's a yorish of himself. Because Maisi is a dead man already. But while he's living, you got to give him the half kaifer. And when it says yoshim, it means to himself. It says kshasu treifa v'ma yoshev nafshe. So Rava doesn't buy that pshat. Rava really doesn't buy that pshat. Amar Rava, shtei tshuvas b'David. There's two problems with this pshat. Chada the Yoshev Kitani. It doesn't say to him, it says to his Yoshev. Void kaiferhu. The payment of ransom is only when somebody is 6 feet under, when he's buried. Void kaiferhu v'amrei shakish kaifer neim nishtamel ma'achamisa. But Rava said it's not a raya. Why is it not a raya? Because it means that chatzi of the kaifer would be worthy to go to the Yoshim. There aren't any Yoshim, because he can't get married. If there would be Yoshim, then they would get chatzi kaifer. I'm a Rava royally told, but he doesn't have any children.
Why can't we learn that he had children?
He can't have children because who could he marry?
He had children.
No, those children.
And had relations with the Jewish woman and had children.
He went ahead
and had relations.
No, we wouldn't give a case that's not legal. We need a case.
Would be considered Yarshim?
What?
That wouldn't be a legal Yoresh?
Sure.
If there was no action, or if the Kedushin wasn't Tofes and he still married her? That wouldn't be, the son wouldn't be considered a Yaresh?
The son,
of that Eved.
The son, the yichus would go. That's a big question. The yichus is complicated because the yichus part of his avdus is after him. The yichus part of his free part, it might be a Yerush, but we're not going to talk about a case that's not legal.
We're going to talk about Mamzer.
It's not mamzer. This is not mamzer.
I know it's not a Mamzer, but Mamzer is also not legal. The Gemara's full of Mamzer. From top to
Yeah, but it'll say mamzer. Here it didn't say anything like that. Let me just stop a second to see what the status would be if Tony / Mordechai would sleep with a Beis Yaakov girl and have a child. The yichus of that child is problematic because by an eved the yichus goes after the eved, but by the free part the yichus goes after the woman. So what the yichus of the child is questionable. I don't know. I have to be mayin into that. We'll actually learn those sugyas in Yirtzeh Hashem and Kedushin. Amar Rava. Kishem shamakadesh chatzi isha eina mekudeshes. Rava says categorically that just like if you're mekadesh a half a woman, she's not mekudeshes. Kach chetzia shivcha v'chetzia bas chayrin. if you're Mekadesh a half a Shifcha, a half a Baschayrin, in other words, again, Berish freed his half, so this is Miriam / Mary. So Kach Chetzia Shifcha v'Chetzia Baschayrin Sheniskacha, that a Yid is Mekadesh, half Mary, half Miriam, ain't Kedusha Kedushin. The Kedushin is not a good Kedushin. And likewise, Rabba Bar Avhuna teaches the same lesson. Dorish Rabba Bar Avhuna, Kishem Shemekadesh Chatzi Isha Ein Mekudeshes, just like if you're Mekadesh half a woman, she's not Mekudeshes. Chetzia Shifcha v'Chetzia Baschayrin Sheniskacha, if half a Shifcha, half a Baschayrin, Mary / Miriam, gets Mekudeshes to Chayim, ain't a Mekudeshes. So right away Rav Chisda says, I'm sorry, but the two cases are not the same. When you're Mekadesh, half of a woman, you're Shire B'Kinyana. You're not Mekadesh all that you could be Mekadesh. But when you're Mekadesh, Mary / Miriam, you are being Mekadesh all that's available. And that's what Rav Chisda says. Amalei Rav Chisda midami. Ha'asam Shire B'Kinyana. When you're Mekadesh half of a woman, you leave out half. Ha'chalei Shire B'Kinyana. So Rabba Bar Avhuna accepted this kasha, this bumba, this blitz kasha, and he wasn't shy to correct his mistake. People that do things and then they don't correct their mistake. But Rabba Bar Avhuna had the intellectual honesty. I think I told you this once, that, in my day in yeshiva, and it's the way it is in yeshivas all the time. The grass is always greener on the other side. In my day in yeshiva, even though we were learning from Rav Moshe, the Gadol Adar, after a while people got ants in their pants, and they wanted to go. They wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael. There was Rav Chaim Shmulevitz. There were other Ga'inim in Eretz Yisrael. So, and also there was a big guy saying Shiurim, Rav Abba Berman. So one time, a bunch of guys said to me, my Shmeyer, Rav Abba is giving a Hakdama to Yavamas. Come to hear the Hakdama. And so I went. And I was bowled over by the Hakdama that he gave. He wove a tapestry of much of Yavamas into that Shir Hakdama. It was really a thing of beauty, I remember. But before he did that, he gave us a shmooze about how we're supposed to learn. And he said that you could be working on a sugya for 8 hours, and you have a perfect shot in explaining all the terutzim, that how Rashi will for all the kashas of Taisus. And you have a pshat on why Taisus wouldn't accept all those answers. He says, but there's one problem with your pshat. He says, you have to be able to walk away from your whole 8 hours work because of one problem. That's Amita Shel Torah. He says, you have to have intellectual honesty. I remember him giving this talk to us.
And who's the rabbi who walked away from all of his Essen?
Right. Shimon HaMsaini. Right? Kishem shekibalti schar al hadrisha, kach kibalti schar al aprisha. Just like I got reward for the drasha, I get reward for walking away. Excellent dimyan.
Yeah, that was a Rabbi Akiva came up with.
Right. Rabbi Akiva said, "Es l'rabbis talmidei chacham." And I always wondered if Rabbi Akiva said Es l'rabbis talmidei chachamim before the death of the 24,000 talmidim or after the death of 24,000 talmidim. So anyway, Rabba Bar Avhuna is going to correct his mistake over here. Hadar ukim Rabba Bar Avhuna amoyro olei. He set up a broadcaster. He wasn't shy about it. V'darish v'hamachshela hazais tachas yodecha. Machshela means a stumbling block. You should have this stumbling under your hand. When he says that this refers to Torah, Ein Adam Oimid al Divrei Torah, a person sometimes doesn't arrive at the truth of Torah, elim kei nichshel b'hem. You're going to stumble on it. And therefore he corrects it. Afal pisha amar mekadesh chatzi isha eina mekudeshes. Even though it says if you're mekadesh half a woman, she's not mekudeshes. Aval chetzia shivcha v'chetzia baschayrin sheniskacha. But a half a shivcha, half a baschayrin, Mary/Miriam. That's mekudesh techayim kedushin. Or kedushin is good at kedushin. My timer because hasam shaya b'kinyanim. When you're mekadesh half of an isha, you're left over half. Hacha lo shaya b'kinyanim.
But Rava didn't do that late before.
What?
Rava still held with this. Rava before.
You don't mean Rava, you mean Rabbah.
No, I'm a Rava. Kishem sham mekadesh chatzi isha en mekudeshes kat chetzia shivcha v'chetzia baschayrin sheniskacha en kedusha kedushin. Right before Darish Rava.
Here he's saying she is Mekudeshes. There he says no.
Yeah, no, in Hanami. Rava didn't retract, but he retracted.
Yeah.
He retracted. It was only Rabbi Bar Huna that retracted. Amar Rav Sheshes, Kishem Shemekadish Chatzi Isha Ein Mekudeshes, Kach Chetzia Shivcha V'Chetzia Baschayrin Sheniskatza En Kedushin Kedusha Kedusha. So he's also saying like Rava. V'im lochshach adam loimer, and if a person whispers to you and says, well, Ezu hi shivcha charufa, what's the case of a shivcha charufa where she's half redeemed and half not? Zu chetz shechetz yeshivcha v'chetz baschayrin hamureses le'eved ivri. Right, so he says, you see that it can happen. Because what's a shivcha charufa? Remember, an Eved Ivri is an anomaly that when he's sold as a slave, he could be given over to a shivcha. And what's a shivcha charufa? An Eved Ivri that's engaged to a shivcha that was half-freed. So that's Mary/Miriam. So you see that there could be Kedushin. Im lach shechadam leimer, ezui shivcha charufa. Zu chetzia shivcha v'chetzia baschayrin. Hamureses l'eved ivri. Alma basis rusei. So you see that there is Kedushin, even if it's only to half. Emalai, so you say to him, klach eitzel Reb Yishmael. Go to Reb Yishmael. Reb Yishmael learns, shehu aimer b'shivcha ha'kananis hamureses l'eved ivri. He learns that, Reb Yishmael learns that a shivcha charufa is not one that's half freed and half slave. It's a woman that's completely a slave. He holds that dibra Torah koloshim b'nei adam b'haftei lo niftasa means that she wasn't redeemed at all. She's a shivcha kananis that's married to an Eved Ivri, which is allowed. But of course, a shivcha kananis can't be married to an Eved Ivri because there's no kedushin to a full shivcha kananis. And yet, Rabbi Yishmael says, "Shu'aymer b'shivcha kananis hamureses le'eved ivri." So asks the Gemara, "B'shivcha kananis basis rusei?" So obviously, when it uses the lashon over there of being engaged, it doesn't mean engaged. Elamai yislach l'meimer mai mureses miyuchedes. It means designated. So here also, according to Rabbi Kiva, that learns that it means chachi shivcha chachi baschayrin. It doesn't mean she's engaged. Hachanami mai mureses miyuchedes. Okay. Now, the Gemara gives us another scenario. This is wild. Amar Rav Chisda, chetzia shivcha v'chetzia baschayrin. You have Mary/Miriam, sheniskacha l'Ruven. She gets Mekudeshes to one brother, Ruvain. V'nishtachra, and then Gedalia decides to free his half. So now she's full Miriam. V'chazer v'niskacha l'Shimon. So she goes ahead now that she's completely free, and she's gets Mekudeshes to the other brother Shimon. Then umeisu shneim. Then Reuven and Shimon die. Guess what? Misyabemes leLevi. Levi could be miyabem Miriam now. Now we know that if a woman has zika from two brothers, there's no yibam, because it says Yavama Yavay Ala Mishi Yesh Le zika from one brother, not somebody who has zika from two brothers. However, Misyabemes leLevi, as we turn, boy, are these dafin full. Misyabemes leLevi ve'ein ani kaira ba'esha shnei mesim. She's not considered the wife of two brothers because Mamanivshach. Because Manivshach. I Kedusha de Reuven Kedushin. If the Kedushin, when she was Mary / Miriam, if that Kedushin was good, then Kedusha de Shimon lav Kedushin. Then the Kedushin of Shimon couldn't be Chal because she was already married. Two Jews can't marry the same woman. The I Kedusha de Shimon Kedushin, and if Shimon's Kedushin was good, that means that you can't be Mekadosh Mary / Miriam, then Kedusha de Reuven lav Kedushin. So Mamanavshach, either she was married only to Reuven, or she was married only to Shimon. Either way, Levi could be miyabim her. Itmar, Chetzia Shivcha v'Chetzia Baskorin, Niskatcha l'Reuven. So here again, you have Berish freed her, Gedalia didn't. So she's Mary / Miriam, Sheniskatcha l'Reuven, Minishtakra, and then Gedalia freed her, V'chaz v'Niskatcha l'Shimon. Rav Yosi Bar Chama Omer Rav Nachman. Rav Yosi Bar Chama says in the name of Rav Nachman, Paku Kedusha Rishon. Once Gedalia freed her and she became full Miriam, she's like a Gershon Isgaya. And Gershon Isgaya Kekatan Shenoi Ladami, and therefore her first Kedushin with Reuven popped off. And therefore, when Shimon was Mekadosh her, Shimon's Kedushin is good Kedushin, because Paku Kedusha Rishon. Rav Zera Amar Rav Nachman, Rav Zera says the name Nachman, no. Reuven was Mekadosh the Miriam part. When Gedalia freed her, so now she's completely Reuven, and she's completely Miriam, so then Reuven's Kedushin on half spreads to her whole. Gomru Kedusha Rishon. So Amar Rab Zera Kavasi Didi Mistavra. It's reasonable to say like me, Dichsiv Lo Yumsu, if an Eved Ivri is Mekadosh this Mary / Miriam, he doesn't get Misa. If somebody commits adultery with her, he doesn't get Misa. Again, if Mary / Miriam is Mekadesh to an Eved Ivri, and Chatzkel sleeps with her, see, I didn't say Marshall sleeps with her, because he's in Wisconsin. Says the Gemara, just checking that you're awake, Marshall. You notice how happy Mark is that you're here, Amish.
Hey, Mark.
Says the Gemara. So anyway, you should feel bad for Chatzkel, Marshall. That is your Hebrew name, right? Anyway, so says the Gemara. I'm sorry. I really get upset when people interrupt me in the middle of a tricky piece, and I just did that myself. I don't do it often, but I just did it there, which was silly. So again, Amar Rav Zera Kavasi Didi Mistabra. It's reasonable to assume, like me, that when the other half of Mary / Miriam is freed, then Reuven's Kedushin completes. Because it says, in the case of the Shifcha Charufa, where an Eved Ivri is Mekadosh, Mary / Miriam, and then Chatzkel sleeps with her, lo yumsu. Chatzkel is not put to death, nor is Mary/Miriam. Ki lo yichupasa, because she wasn't freed. Ha chupasha, but if she was freed, then the kedushin would spread out, and then if somebody sleeps with her, she does get. They do get put to death. Yumsu. So that's a really good raya, because that's the implication is that the only reason why there's no capital crime is because she wasn't freed. But if she would be freed, and she's married to the Eved Ivri, so then the kedushin would spread through, and then there would be execution. Amalei Abaya, uletana de Rabbi Yishmael, the Amma b'shivcha knanis hamurasel Eved Ivri. And according to Rabbi Yishmael, who says that the case of the shivcha charufa is where an Eved Ivri is designated for marry, she wasn't freed at all. How do you learn that? Because it's kiloi chupasha, because she wasn't freed. But if she would be freed, there would be adultery. But if she was freed, there wouldn't be adultery, because there was never a kedushin what he made. Because when he was with her, he was an Eved Ivri, and she was a full slave woman. So that kedushin is nothing, and therefore even if you free her, so there's nothing. Why would there be misa? So the Gemara says, when you free her, yumsu? It means when you freed her, and after freeing her, the Eved Ivri is mekadisha, then there would be adultery. Here too, it's no raya. It means after you free the other part of Mary, if then they do another kedushin, then there would be misa. So it's no raya that there is a kedushin if you were mekadesh her when she's Mary/Miriam, and then you free her. We don't say that automatically they're married. That there's no proof for. Amar Avuna bar Ketina Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Ma'isha bi'isha achas shechetzia shivcha v'chetzia bas chayrin. So here we have the case where there was this Mary owned by Berish and Gedalia. Berish freed his half, so now she's Miriam/Mary. V'kafu es Rabba, we forced Gedalia v'asur bas chayrin. Now here it's a question, why did we force Gedalia? By a man, you could say, because there's chiyuv period v'rivya. But here, a woman doesn't have a chiyuv period v'rivya. So why should you force Gedalia? So she won't get married. You're right, she can't marry an Eved because of her Miriam side. She can't marry a Yid because of her Mary side. But let her live till, so what? So the Gemara wants to suggest, this must be going like the Shita in Yevamis of Rabbi Yochanan ben Breika, that women also have a mitzvah period of Rivia. It must be command to Rabbi Yochanan ben Breika, Dharma al Shneim, Oimer Vayvarach Oisam Elikim, Hashem blessed them, Vayomer Pruruvu Milu Es Aretz. That women also have a chiyuv of period of Rivia. So Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Loi. The reason is because if we don't have her get married, many people will take advantage of her. That's not fair to her. You know, if she was a complete shivcha, so then Gedalia would be miyachid her to an Eved Kanani. An Eved Kanani would watch her. No, or an Eved Kanani. Right? And they'll watch her. But now that she's a half, can't give it to anybody. Says the Gemara, and therefore, minik hefker nagabot. They would take her, would have chaos.
Why can't she be given to an Eved Ivri?
He doesn't have an Eved Ivri.
Oh.
She could be given to an Eved Ivri, but he doesn't have an Eved Ivri. Not everybody has Eved Ivris. Why is everybody looking at Barachian? Not everybody has an Eved Ivri. Boy, if the HOA would only know, they would leave me alone.
But if she's given to an Eved Ivri and she's not freed, then the children that they have belong to the master.
No, Eved Ivri.
The children that they have would be a picklish situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but okay, that might not stop you from doing it. Again, that's a picklish situation with the children. Now, boy, we're starting the Chumash here so late tonight. I don't know what's going on here. It's a good Chumash here, though, Rabbi say. I should have welcomed in Sandy Grunfeld. He's standing here so quietly. Okay, so now, Hamoicher Avdoi La'oivik Kechav. Now these are no-nos. Gedalia, who's been up to trouble the whole night, if he sells his Eved Kanani to a guy, to an idolater, we throw the book at him. Because he's being mafkia him for mitzvahs. Eved Kanani has mitzvahs like a woman. Now he sells him to a guy. The guy's going to make him work on Shabbos. The guy's going to feed him chazer. So we make him free him. We make him buy him back. And then free him. Or if he sells him outside of Eretz Yisrael, that's also a no-no. Because selling him outside of Eretz Yisrael is being mafkia him from the mitzvahs of Eretz Yisrael. So what? So the din is Yotze ben Chayrin. He goes free. Tan Rabbanan Ameicha Avdei Dikachavim. If you sell your Eved to a guy, Yotze l'Chayris, but the tzarech gets shichur merabbi rishon. Not only does he has to free him, but he has to provide him with a get shichur. So now the Gemara tells us, not always will Gedalia have to give him a get shichur. See, Gedalia needed money desperately. So he sold the Eved to a guy, but he isn't, Gedalia isn't heartless. Gedalia is not in Wisconsin. Gedalia planned that this Eved would escape. So he provided him with a document that says, when you escape the guy, I grant you your freedom. That's called an unai. Amar B'Shimon Gamliel Ba'medva Amar Shaloi Kosav of unai. Aval Kosav of unai, but if he writes for him an unai, Zel Shichrura. That's his freedom. My unai, what does it mean an unai? Amar Rav Sheshes, the Kosav Lehachi, the Kishetivrak Mimenu, when you flee from the guy, Ein Li Esek Bach. I have nothing more to do with you. So that's tantamount to a get shechur. Tan Rabbana. Well, listen to this Gemara. You just see what tomorrow's daf looks like. No, tomorrow's daf is pretty big also. Oh, can't afford to stop. Got to push on, Rabbi say. Almost finished. Almost finished. Trick of Daf Yomi is not to fall behind. If you fall behind, who do you pay for it? I thank everybody for their wonderful patience. Tan Rabbanan. I'm watching the screen and all 28 of you are still here. Koyach. Tan Rabbanan. Lava alav min ha'oivik kechavim. Let's say Marshall has an Eved, Tony, and he takes a loan from Jack, from a guy. And he uses Tony as a mashkin, as collateral. Kevan she'asaloi oivik kechavim nimusai, as soon as the guy puts his crest around Tony's neck, Yotze l'Chayris. Now that's the Gemara's Havamina. That's what Nimusai means. Nimusai means that when you took the Eved as a mashkin, so the one who took the collateral puts his emblem, puts a chain, the house of Jack, around Tony's neck. As soon as he does that, Tony goes free. Maini Musay, Am Rav Huna bar Yehuda Nashke. Jack's crest. Jack's emblem.
And that's the goy puts the emblem.
Yeah.
So how does he, the goy has the slave, how does he go free?
Goes free means that if the guy escapes,
Back to the
yeah, or it's going to be Marshall's job to buy him back and free him. Master Rav Sheshes, so Rav Sheshes asks, now the next Gemara assumes a not popular view that Yesh Kinyan La'akam La'afkia Eretz Yisrael Midei Meiser. That if a guy owns land, then it's potter for Meiser. So Master Rav Sheshes, who are recent sharecroppers, that means that Ruvain works the land of this guy for 25, 33, or 50% of the crop. Or Vachakiris. This is where Ruvain is a tenant farmer. That means that he rents the land from the guy and he promises him a certain amount of payment, 50 bushels. Varise bateyavos. And even if Ruvain is an ancestral sharecropper, he was a sharecropper, his father was a sharecropper on this land, or va'oived kechavim shemishkin sadeu liyisrael, or if a guy gave as collateral his field to Yisrael, afal pisha asaloi nimusai, even though the Yisrael put his nimusai there, still pturim in a meiser. So if Reuben is a sharecropper, a tenant farmer, or even an ancestral sharecropper, still he doesn't have to give from his 50% or from his part of the crops meiser, because it's the guy's. Now, and even if the guy gives the land as a mashkin to the Yisrael, and in the meantime the Yisrael is using it, he doesn't have to take off meiser. Now, it says over here, nimusai, that can't be interpretation crest, because they didn't put the crest on the field. It means a crest that's hung around the neck of a slave. Sodabas nashkehi, that can't be the pshat by a field. Allah Amar Rav Sheshes Zman. Oh, it means that if there's a date of when the debtor, when the creditor assumes the collateral, that means that Marshall took a loan and said that if he doesn't pay Ruvain by July, then Ruvain keeps Tony. As soon as the date arrives, then Tony goes free. So then how come over here, if the guy gave the field as collateral to Ruvain, if the date arrived, then why doesn't Ruvain have to give meiser? If the date arrived, then he keeps the field, so then he should have to give meiser. So kasha zman azman says more like kasha had the mata zimnei had the loy mata zimnei. One is talking about where the time arrived. So when the time arrived, the eved goes free. When are we saying that Ruvain doesn't have to give meiser? That's before the time arrived. Says Gemara, if the time arrived and Marshall defaulted on the loan, of course Tony goes free. He becomes the property of the guy. Both are talking about where the time doesn't arrive. It didn't arrive. So if the time for the payment of the debt didn't arrive, then why does Tony go free yet? If the time didn't arrive, then Jack can't keep Tony. One is talking about where, in the case of the Eved, he said that when the time arrives, he could keep the slave itself. So for the fact that he was allowing, if the time arrives that the slave will go out and be freed for mitzvahs, we already free him before the time comes. In the case of the land, it's talking about where, in the case of the land, it's talking about where the guy said that if he doesn't pay up the debt, then Reuven could have the fruit of the land, but not the land itself. And since Reuven could have the fruit of the land, so then there's no chiyuv ma'aser, because the land itself still belongs to the guy. And finally, v'iba yasema b'shalav almanas l'mashkanai, where he gave the loan with the condition that in the event that Marshall doesn't pay by July 1st, he's going to take the slave, or he's going to take the field. But v'loy mishkanai, but he didn't take it yet. So by the Eved, the fact that he can't take the Eved now, that's enough that the Eved should go free. By the slave, by the field, if the creditor if the guy didn't yet take the field, the other way around, if the Yid didn't yet take the field, even though he can, but he didn't exercise the right to take the field, the payers are still considered the guys, and they're still part of Ma'aser. Whew.